Hey you guys, it's Miss Arneson, and this video is to talk to you about the properties of water that are important to biology for Science 152. So let's go ahead and get into this and keep it short. Oh, this is a picture of the Earth, and one of the things that I hear people say when they're like, the Earth is really flat and the pictures that they have on the internet are fabricated, is that the Earth, you can't take a picture of the whole thing like this because half of the Earth is always in darkness. And that's totally true. You cannot take a picture of the whole world like this. But what they do is they take pictures from a bunch of different angles and then they make a composite. So they glue them all together like a puzzle piece. And so, yes, the Earth is actually a sphere, and you can take pictures of it from outer space and put them together to make the whole thing. Okay, I want to talk to you guys a little bit about how much water is on the Earth and how significant that is. This is a picture from a space mission where the leader of the mission was like, let's turn the camera around because it was leaving our solar system. It was on its way for a long time, and let's take a picture of Earth. And we get this famous picture called Pale Blue Dot. And this little pale blue dot right there, that is the Earth from many astronomical units away, but you can see it does have kind of a little bit of a blue tint to it, and that is because of our magnificent amount of water. So there's a lot of properties of water, just like there's properties of other types of matter, like you could talk about the properties of gold or any other element or any other compound, any material. And you don't have to write any of these down because these are properties of water that aren't necessarily important to us in biology, and that's what we're going to focus on. So when we get into these other slides, you do want to write down the stuff that is on those slides and what I'm talking about while we look at them. Okay, polarity. So polarity is a term that you can have in many different disciplines. If you're talking in English and you have polar figures, it means they're opposite of each other. And polarity in science means that you're going to have charges. We're going to have basically a magnet. On one side, we're going to have negative charge, and on the other side, we're going to have a positive charge. You can kind of remember that because of the north and south poles of the Earth. Remember, a compass is basically using the magnetism of the Earth to point north. And so it's basically the same thing, but water is a polar molecule. So it kind of acts like a little magnet. It means that there are charges on both sides of a water molecule. Because the electrons of the hydrogen, basically, there's the electron of the oxygen, the one electron of the hydrogen gets pulled towards the oxygen molecule, you get these positive charges over here, and it's not very positive, but it's a little positive, and you get this tiny little negative bit of charge on the oxygen side. So every water molecule acts kind of like a magnet. This is really important because that means that the basically the solutions inside of our body, since they're largely composed of water with things dissolved in it, is ionic. It's charged. And that means that we can conduct electricity in our body. And you might be like, well, that's not good, right? If you get electricity in your body, you die because you get electrocuted. Well, in a lot of cases, it's actually really important. Signals in cells are a lot of times sent through electricity. This is a neuron, for example, and it's showing all these little bits of light as electrical charges getting sent. So we actually need that polarity. We need those little magnet-like water molecules in our body so that we can have things like electrical signals sent inside of our neurons to give messages in our brain. All right, one other thing, there's two other things that polarity really causes that are important. One of them is cohesion. So cohesion basically means, this is what you should write down, water molecules are attracted to other water molecules. So water molecules are attracted to other water molecules. The positive parts, the hydrogens, are attracted to the negative part where the oxygens are in the water molecules, and that kind of glues them together. That is called a hydrogen bond. So a hydrogen bond's definition is a weak attraction between water molecules. And hydrogen bonds are super important. They actually hold DNA together. So we've talked about in other terms how you can unzip and then rezip DNA molecules when you're copying them. And the reason you can do that is because the inside of that double-stranded staircase is held together by hydrogen bonds. So if we're looking at this leaf and we see this water droplet, the water molecules are all attracted to each other, and it's a force that basically is defying gravity, right? This water is standing up off of this leaf in this little droplet because those water molecules are magnetically attracted to each other because it's an ionic or a polar substance, water is. Okay, so kind of like cohesion, we also have adhesion. Adhesion is when you add another substance besides water. So these water molecules, yes, they're attracted to themselves, but because they're little magnets, they're also attracted to other objects that are ionic or have charges. And so when it's connected, so like here, this water molecule looks, I mean, it just visually seems like if we had a physics experiment, like it should fall off the leaf, right? Like it looks like it's being pulled down by gravity, but it doesn't because those water molecule magnets are sticking to the leaf as well. So polarity causes adhesion and cohesion. Okay, another really important thing that's caused by polarity is that water is a universal solvent. So you might have heard of that before. Universal solvent basically means you can dissolve almost anything in water. I know you can already think of something that we can't, and we'll talk about that in a second. But water dissolves a lot of things. Basically anything you drink, unless you're drinking cheese. No, cheese even has water in it. Yeah, I can't really think of anything that you would drink. Would you drink canola oil or like melted lard? I would not. Those would be examples of things that do not have water in them and they don't mix with water and they're liquids. But pretty much anything else that you're going to drink is going to be dissolved in water. So when we say it's a universal solvent, what we mean is that you can put just about any solute inside of the solvent water and it will dissolve because water has those positive and negative parts on it, so it pulls other things apart. So it's really, really important. The one thing you know of probably already that does not dissolve is going to be fats. Lipids. Remember, lipids are the macromolecule of fat. And the really important way that your body uses those fats is that it can make things waterproof or separate one substance from another substance. So this is an example of what's called a phospholipid bilayer in a cell. It has, each one of these little phospholipids has a head, and the head is hydrophilic. It likes water. The tail is hydrophobic. It hates water. So these line up in these double layers so that they're protected. The inside hates water and the outside likes it. And that basically provides a barrier so that things can't get into and out of your cells without your body letting them in. So polarity being, water being polar also helps us make things in life, like cells, waterproof so that they can keep some water out and keep some water in and maintain homeostasis. Okay, another thing that's kind of related to polarity in water is called specific heat. And specific heat basically comes down to how much energy does it take to do a phase change in water. So remember, a phase change would be like from solid to liquid or liquid to gas, or you can even have solids go to a gas if you have the process of sublimation. And the specific heat for water is pretty high. So specific heat is something I would talk about definitely more in a chemistry class than a biology class. But just know that the specific heat of water is pretty high. And that means two things for life. It means that it takes a lot of energy to heat water up, and it also takes a lot of energy to cool water down. That regulates body temperature and the temperature of our environment around us because a lot of things around us contain water. So there's an example of this in a swimming pool. So Mr. Arneson and I are lucky enough to have a swimming pool. And here he is over here in the corner of the pool. But the warmest time to swim is actually not the hottest time of the day. The pool is actually way warmer like at night than it is during the daytime. The reason, not through the whole night, but like right when night starts. So like 7 o'clock, 6 o'clock, that's a great time to get in the pool. It's very warm because it had to have the sun shine on it and the air be warm around it for a long time for it to actually change temperature. Same thing overnight, you can get in the pool and the pool will actually be like a warm temperature compared to the air because it takes it a long time to cool off. But your body is mostly made of water, and that means it takes a lot of energy to cool you off or heat you up. And that's really important for life because we have to maintain homeostasis, right? We can't be too cold, we can't be too hot, or we would die. So that's another really essential property of water that we need as living things. Okay, phase changes. It's pretty easy to do phase changes for water. So there's some things like you can like let's see, think about melting a metal. You have to get metal pretty hot to melt it in most cases. But water will melt at room temperature, right? The temperature that most of the earth is, water can be liquid, but it can also freeze and it can evaporate, so it can move around from place to place on the earth. And so that is really essential for life. We need liquid water in our cells for us to be able to move around and do things. But we also need the water to move around so that we have plants get water. And we have to drink water from the ground a lot of times. We drink groundwater. So this is really an essential thing that we have liquid water on the earth and that water can move around through phase changes pretty easily. Okay, now we get to the sad part. What do humans do to the water cycle? This is just one famous example. We'll talk about some more in class, but the RLC was used by the former Soviet Union to water a bunch of crops. So it was this big, huge body of water um, right in the middle of the Eurasian continent, but it got drained and now it is basically dried up. In fact, here are some boats that were formerly floating on some water, and now you can see that this area kind of looks like the New Mexican desert. This used to be a huge sea. And so humans really can have a big impact on water, and we need to be careful and conscientious about how we're doing that because it's one of those things where we could really mess up our really great deal on this pale blue dot. I hope you guys have a great day and go out and enjoy the snow before it melts.